The Pilgrims were people first. Okay, we have to give them props for creating the first democracy since the ancient Greeks, right here in River City. Don't forget to vote. But please remember, before the Pilgrims were monuments and salt and pepper shakers, they were people first. Even though they made that amazing voyage 400 years ago, in many ways, they were just like us. That can't be, you say? The Pilgrims were sober and pious, you say? Not like our beer-guzzling tailgaters, you say? Guess what? The Pilgrims never drank water. Couldn't stand it. It could make you sick. So what did they drink? Beer, and lots of it. When they ran out of beer, they drank hard liquor. Not so different from those football fans after all. How about this? Have you ever arrived at the airport to find out your flight has been delayed for a couple of hours? How frustrating. What if you were already on board with no way to get off and it was delayed for 31 days? That happened to the Pilgrims on the Mayflower before they ever left England, but still, they pressed on. Who likes math word problems? 102 pilgrims leave England. 2 die on the way. 2 months later, 102 pilgrims arrive. I asked my 8-year-old grandson, how did that happen? He was completely stumped. If he were 18 or 28, I think he would have figured it out. Baby Oceanus was born in the middle of the ocean, and baby Peregrine traveled to Plymouth Bay to get born. Just like us, they had cool baby names. Today, they run the gamut from Apple to Zoltan, but in 1620, the Brewsters brought sons Love and Wrestling on the Mayflower, and daughters Fear and Patience followed soon after. Come on, those names are way cooler than North or Saint. Sorry, Kanye. How about teenage shenanigans? Another boy with the fairly normal name of Francis Billington, after months of nothing to play with aboard ship except his iPad, puzzles, was eager for adventure. So he did what any teenage boy in America might do when left alone. He got into the guns. He decided to have a little target practice in a wooden ship near the powder kegs. Could have blown up the whole ship. But it didn't. Needless to say, he gained a reputation. Finally, they get off the boat, and he goes exploring the wilds of Massachusetts. He climbs a tree and sees the Pacific Ocean. He discovered the Northwest Passage. Now, consider for a moment that Francis was stupid enough to play with guns on a wooden ship, but was smart enough to know there was a Northwest Passage to the Pacific Ocean. Nearly 200 years later, it took Lewis and Clark 2 years before they found it. Back to the story. He was so excited, he ran back to tell everyone. As you can imagine, almost everyone, especially his family, ignored him. He finally got one of the sailors to go see this earth-shattering find, only to discover it was a lake, which they named Billington Sea as their little joke. His father, John, recalls a grown-up story. A few of the men were exploring for a site to build the town. The men were strung out on a footpath through the thick woods when Stephen Hopkins, who had spent 3 years in Jamestown painting the colors of the wind with Pocahontas, was showing them an Indian deer trap in the path. William Bradford, the man himself, at the back of the line, blusters his way to the front to see what the holdup is. He steps right into the trap, which swings him upside down into the tree. Billington is laughing hysterically while the future governor is demanding to be released. That didn't help the Billington family reputation. Bradford may have become one of the greatest leaders in America, but first he was just one of the people swinging in a tree. Did you know the Pilgrims brought 2 dogs with them? And we're not talking teacup chihuahuas or pocket poodles. I'm talking megalodog, a mastiff, which eats big and, well, does everything big, and a hyperactive Springer Spaniel. My favorite story about this famous doggy duo involves the best friend of the Pilgrims, Squanto, their Indian translator and gardening guru. You know he taught them to plant corn, right? Do you remember what he told them to put in the ground first to fertilize it? Fish. What you may not know is that before you plant the corn, you leave the fish in the ground for 2 weeks to rot. Our pilgrims discovered that when you have a field of stinky fish, your dogs will try to dig up the yummy dinner that you buried for them. Who's the hungry girl? Who wants the stinky fish? After putting a 24-hour guard on the fish field, eventually it all worked out. They got a big harvest, and we got a big holiday. Pilgrims, you gotta love 'em. Nation planters and salt and pepper shakers. But definitely people first.